Today's speaker came to us because one of my students in a previous semester said, hey, I'm interning at this company and you really ought to have my boss come and speak. And I listened to that student, and in an hour I'll tell you if I'm grateful or not that I listened to that student. But if you have a recommendation for someone to speak, we'd be interested in hearing about that. I think Brent's rise to stardom was decided when he was a very young man. He graduated in the top 10 of his high school. I should mention there were only 12 in his senior class when he graduated from Escalante, Utah. He's a computer man, but didn't spend a lot of time as a young man playing on the computer or video games. Instead, he enjoyed playing sports and making stuff. Brent spent some time as an electrical engineer major at BYU, where he discovered his interest in computers, coding at the age of 21. While in his junior year at BYU, Brent started his first company, fueling his passion for business management. It took him only 9 years, but he graduated from BYU. We hope most of you are on a little faster track than that. And he graduated with BYU with a computer science major and a business management minor. In the past lives, Brent has been a dishwasher, firefighter, landscaper, short order cook, shooting instructor, missionary, author, DJ, system administrator, investor, and software engineer. Many of you will know that in addition to the executive lecture series, we have an entrepreneur lecture series. You know, arguably Brent's best fit would have been in the entrepreneur lecture series. But anyone who's been a successful entrepreneur needs to learn some executive skills, and anyone who wants to be a successful executive must have some of the same skills that an entrepreneur has. So we hope that this combination will be good for you in your developing of your career. After selling the company he had founded in 1999, after selling his company, he co-founded Jive Communication and served as the CEO of that entity for the first 5 years. Left them and then started Blip, his current company, in 2016. Today he serves as the CEO of Blip, finds passion around building something that solves the specific problems for small and medium-sized businesses. Brent is a husband, father, and an avid mountain biker, and still enjoys making stuff. Please join me in welcoming Brent to the stage.
Thanks.
Do you want your water up here?
Yeah, thanks. So, thanks, Tom. I am going to bring my water bottle. How's the sound? Can everybody hear in the back? I'll try not to talk into both mics at once. So first, let me get some context before I dive in. Like he explained, I understand that this is sort of a business class, an executive lecture series. How many of you are business majors? Let's include finance, accounting, marketing, something in the business school. Okay? And then raise your hand if you didn't just raise your hand, if you have some other major. Seriously? 3. Okay, I gotta know now, all 3 of you. Awesome. Okay, next.
Exercise science with a minor.
Cool, and?
Philosophy with a minor accounting.
Philosophy, okay. Did I miss anybody that raised their hand that I just didn't see?
Community health, health service administration.
Okay.
Aviation science, professional pilot.
Aviation, cool. Anybody else that I missed there? Okay. Like Tom said, I am an entrepreneur. I never realized it. I never intended to be an entrepreneur. I fell into it, honestly, just totally backwards. It was an accident. Is that okay, that thing? Okay. It's not my fault, I promise. Like Tom said, I started my first company in '99. It was the height of the internet heyday before the dot-com crash. I didn't know what an entrepreneur was. I just barely learned to code, but lots of people wanted whatever I could do. And they paid me to code, and so I started a company doing that. Holy cow. I'm going to stay over here for a second. Since then, so I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years, which seems like longer than I thought I would even live, let alone do the same thing. How many of you have some interest in being an entrepreneur? How many of you think you might do something entrepreneurial someday? Raise your hand. Let me see. Okay, so I'm going to be talking mostly to you today. The rest of you are welcome to listen in, but understand that I've tuned my comments to that crowd. So, like Tom said, I was invited to speak. It was actually back in February when I was first invited. So I had a long time to prepare. And I spent the first month just thinking about what would it be that I could communicate to you that would be of most value. And to be honest, I kind of struggled with that. I couldn't come up with a concrete concept that seemed super valuable. So instead, I switched my strategy and started instead trying to think about what are the characteristics that would identify a valuable concept. All set? Okay, we'll see if that's better. So instead, I tried to figure out, like, how would I identify a valuable concept once I thought I had one? Like, how would I classify it? How would I quantify its value? And what I came up with was that I think the very most valuable thing that I could give you would be to tell you something that is true, but that's probably the opposite of something that you believe already. And once I came up with that heuristic, like, the rest of my comments came very easily. Like, the rest of the talk kind of wrote itself. In order for it to make the most sense, I probably need to start with some context, though. I want to start by zooming out. I want to zoom a long way, like all the way out. I want to start by talking about everything. And I mean literally everything. I mean all of the matter and energy in the entire universe. I want to talk about the position and motion of every particle, of every substance, in every galaxy, in all of space and time. Every intelligence that has ever contemplated anything. And I want to talk about the forces and interrelationships that gave birth to the whole thing to start with in the very beginning. Now, that seems like a lot of stuff, and I've only got 20 minutes here. But what I want to talk about one very concrete, elegant truth that encompasses all of that. Everything that happens in the universe comes about because of two things, and two things only. Probabilities and incentives. What that means is that everything that happens is some combination of probabilistic semi-randomness, sounds like a robot term, and meddling, right? Now, granted, once an event happens, there are natural laws, and we describe those with physics and math and stuff like that. And those natural laws cause certain cascading events after a certain event happens. But each of those sub-events in that chain still has its own probability of occurring or not. And for any event in that chain that does happen, there were many, many alternative events that didn't happen but had non-zero probabilities of happening. I apologize, this is getting really wonky, but bear with me for a second here. So those alternative events that didn't happen, they didn't happen because of a couple of different reasons. It could be just that's the randomness. That's just the universe being the universe. Or it could be that some of those events happened near enough to some sort of sentient being, some being that sensed things and develops sensations about those. Those sensations are either pleasure or discomfort of some kind. And that being, sensing those events around it, formed an opinion about those events. And that opinion, if it was strong enough, became an incentive for that being to try to intervene. So there you've got probabilities and incentives. Let me put it this way. If you go about the rest of your day, as you have it planned, with no changes to your schedule, there is some non-zero likelihood that you will encounter a grizzly bear, right? The odds are small, but there is a non-zero chance that you will encounter a grizzly bear. If you go camping in the woods tonight, the odds go way up that you'll encounter that grizzly bear, right? If the bear eats you, well, that's incentives. So everything that happens in the universe, and that is takeaway number one. Everything that happens in the universe is because of one of those two things, or a combination of them. Incentives or probabilities, that is it. Now, like I said, the chain of events is sort of magical in that these beings that think and feel and have opinions, they can predict with some degree of accuracy the likelihood of those downstream events happening. And then they develop, like I said, opinions about whether they should happen or not, or be muted, or amplified, or deviated in some way. So we'll call them actors. Those actors, if they are incentivized enough, they will intervene, right? That's takeaway number two. Actors intervene in order to optimize, okay? Now, there is something that I want to point out here, which is that any actor who intervenes is not guaranteed to get the outcome that they want. Like, even something as trivial as if you decide to get up and walk across the room and close your office door, you are not guaranteed to be able to do that. Even though the odds are highly likely that if you engage in that activity, the outcome you want will happen, there is a non-zero chance that an earthquake or an asteroid or a zombie apocalypse will eliminate you or the door before you get there, right? So takeaway number 3, the most you can do by intervening is skew the odds. Now, if you stand up and intend to go open the door, the odds are very high that that door is going to open, but they're not 100%. You cannot guarantee that that is going to happen because there's all this other random and interconnected stuff that happens, okay? With me so far? Okay. Now, I'm sure you're all wondering, this guy's, first of all, not talking about executives specifically, but talking about entrepreneurship. That's not very interesting to me. And now he's talking about grizzly bears and the cosmos. How is that the least bit related? It's related because of this concept that the most you can do when you try to cause something to happen is shift the odds of that thing happening, okay? So if someone sets out to be an entrepreneur, I assume, it seems reasonable to assume that they want to be a successful entrepreneur. So that's where I'm going to tune the rest of my remarks to, is how to become a successful entrepreneur. There are lots and lots of books in the popular media and lots of tips. And
This good man tells me it's because you bend down and that hits your mic because it's right on your collar. Put it on a little bit of the shirt in front of you.
he's telling me to. This is his idea.
We're not undressing him. Ask your question, you can proceed it so
Okay.
get it to the mic.
I'm going to write a letter to Vans. It's their fault. Can you still hear me okay? Sound still good? Okay. So I'll try to not bump the mic now, I guess. So anyway, trying to crystallize these concepts. So what do grizzly bears and the cosmos have to do with entrepreneurship? The fact of the matter is that there is no guaranteed course for success in entrepreneurship. There's not a set of patterns that you can implement perfectly and know that you'll be successful. The most that you can do is skew the odds in your favor. The best thing you can do is try to change the inputs so that whatever function happens in the middle, it produces the outputs that you want. So I've created this very simplified version of entrepreneurship, right? You start with inputs, that's what you can change. You have this nebulous cloud of randomness in the middle, like other people messing with your stuff and the universe and all of that, and it leads to some outcome, right? I'm making the claim that you can't do anything about this. Is anybody willing to fight me on that? Okay, so then let's move on. So then what is the piece that you can change out of that? I don't ask rhetorical questions. If I ask a question, give me an answer. Inputs, right? So the inputs are what you can change, okay? So there are clearly a lot of inputs, and like I said, popular media has exhaustively touched on a lot of them. My assertion, though, is that most of the things listed in popular media are so close to being pointless that you can just round them off, okay? There are absolutely things that are highly correlated with entrepreneurship. So in my research, and like I said, I've had several months to research this, and I appreciate Rob and Ken being willing guinea pigs for several of these rants as I've been working on this. Let's play a game. And again, I don't ask rhetorical questions, so I'm going to ask questions and you give me answers, okay? So it seems reasonable to me that we should be able to start dissecting what leads to high probabilities of success in entrepreneurship by looking at successful entrepreneurs. So far, so good? That seems reasonable? Okay, so my hypothesis is that one of the strongest predictors of entrepreneurial success is going to be college major, right? That was sort of why I was asking about college majors and things. So I'm going to say a name of a famous entrepreneur. By the way, I went through and I found like the top 100 most name-recognizable entrepreneurs. And I'll give you a sampling of those. I won't go through all of them, but I'll say the name, and you guys try to guess what their major was in college. Okay, Gordon Moore, Intel. Well, it wasn't computer science, but good guess. Nope. Chemistry. He studied chemistry at Caltech. Jeff Bezos, Amazon. Quick. Computer science and computer engineering at Princeton. Zuckerberg. Trick question. He actually declared a major in psychology, but mostly took CS classes. Sergey Brin, Google. CS, good job. CS and math at Maryland, and then a master's at Stanford. Larry Page, his co-founder. Computer engineering. Elon Musk, PayPal, Tesla, SpaceX. Physics, very good. Brian Acton, WhatsApp. CS. Jerry Yang, Yahoo. Electrical engineering, come quicker now, come quicker. Craig Newmark, Craigslist. CS, very good. Dave Packard, Hewlett Packard. Double E, electrical engineering. Pierre Omidyar, eBay. CS, very good. We're recognizing a pattern, aren't we? Okay, so I actually...
Here, still majoring in business. Stay with us next week.
Thanks for spoiling it. Yeah, so I've got several more of those. One outlier, Carlos Slim, Telmex. Nope, civil engineering. Bill Gates. Declared major was pre-law, but like Zuckerberg, studied mostly CS. Okay, so I actually started, so I took my list and I grouped it by the most representation. So these were obviously the technical digital people, computer science and electrical engineering, right? So the next group are the non-nerds. Brian Chesky, Airbnb. Come on, guess. Design, at Rhode Island School of Design. Chad Hurley, YouTube. Fine arts, close, yep. Steve Jobs, Apple. No declared major, only lasted one semester, but it was design-ish. It was typesetting and stuff like that. Oprah Winfrey. Communication, close, yep. Martha Stewart. History and art history. No, sorry, history and architectural history. Phil Knight, Nike. Nope. Journalism at Oregon and MBA at Stanford. Yep. J.W. Marriott, right up here at Weber. History. Fred Smith, FedEx. Come on, just guess. Econ at Yale. Sam Walton, Walmart. Econ. Vera Wang. Art history. Ariana Huffington, Huffington Post. Econ at friggin' Yale. No, Cambridge, even better. Herb Kelleher, Southwest Airlines. What? Okay, no, it's a good guess. English. And a JD at NYU. Okay, so what has been conspicuously absent so far? Business. So when I created my list, I intentionally did not pervert the results. I tried to be utterly unbiased. I just found the top 100 most name recognizable, successful top tier entrepreneurs I could find. Guess how many business majors? Not even just business majors. Guess how many people from business school majors were on that list? Close. It was one. He said 3. It was 1. So after the fact, I went through and found all of the business school grads that, and I'm not talking grad school, there were lots of MBAs in the list, but undergraduate business degrees who went on to be top tier successful entrepreneurs. I went hunting for them. I skewed my own results. Do you know how many I found? Now give me your answer. 3. Would you like to know who they were? Okay. And calling them name brand is even a stretch. So, who's heard of John Schnatter? John Schnatter. Better known as Papa John. Right? Okay. What's he more well known for these days? Yeah, so first it was pizza, and then it was getting kicked out of his own company for some bigoted remarks. Yeah. Second person, and this was actually the one that showed up on my list organically, Ralph Roberts. Anybody heard of Ralph Roberts? Yeah, I didn't think so, but you've heard of the company he founded, Comcast. And statistically, you also hate the company that he founded, because last year it was ranked the #1 most hated brand in America for the 10th time in a row. Right? I mean, I actually have no qualms with the product. Like I'm a Comcast subscriber, but the product is one thing and the way they treat their customers is another. Like the way they treat their customers is repulsive. The third one that I found, you have heard of, it's Mark Cuban. Who can tell me the company Mark Cuban founded? Come on, somebody. Broadcast.com. Thank you, there was one person. Who has ever heard of broadcast.com? Right? So why have you heard of Mark Cuban then? He's an entertainer. He's a TV personality, right? His notoriety has nothing to do with his success as an entrepreneur. Now, I actually have the utmost respect for Mark Cuban. He has done remarkably well by any measure. He's just in a totally different category than Sergey Brin or Fred Smith or J.W. Marriott. Like those guys are just in a totally different galaxy compared to Mark Cuban. And he's an entertainer. So what do we take away from this exercise? If you want to be an entrepreneur, is there a correlation between studying business or entrepreneurship and being successful as an entrepreneur? The answer is maybe no, but most likely yes, but the correlation is negative. Right? Maybe not if you compare business students to non-college students. Like just being a college student probably then over-indexes them for success. But if you take college students as a whole, do you know how many people are business majors in college? Do you know what percentage of college students are enrolled and have declared business-ish degrees, like finance, business, marketing, accounting? It's 25% of students in the US. 25% are in the business school at their university. Okay? What percentage of entrepreneurs, I mean, this is anecdotal, but I did a good job on my research. I had 6 months. So what percentage of the entrepreneurs on that list, the organic list, were then business school undergrads? 1%, right? Explain the disconnect for me, right?
I feel like a lot of business majors, though, probably go into less entrepreneurial.
You're exactly right. And I don't mean to disparage for a second the value of the education that you get in a business school. There are things of incredible value to be learned about, like I said, marketing, accounting, finance, business management, organizational behavior, all of that is super important. But you're right, it's more important if you go work for somebody else, right? It's actually still important if you go work for yourself. But it's important, its relative importance might be a 1, and there are other things that have a relative importance of 10 or 100. Okay? So let me start into those. Let me dwell on this for a second first. So that's why they go into something else, is because they have more value there, right? Just sheer economic value is higher in somebody else's company than if they go start something for themselves. What did the people who were the high-end, top-tier successful entrepreneurs, what did they all have in common? What was the thread that ran through all of them? Sorry?
Majors that don't make money. English majors. What do you do with English majors?
Okay, starting the right direction. What else? Keep going.
They have like a specific skill set.
Yes, they were, exactly. They were changing the inputs here. They were developing a skill in themselves that generated value. They weren't studying generating value. They weren't studying business. Like, think about every business ever in the history of all businesses. It's the business of something, right? They were studying the something, not the business, right? Entrepreneurship inherently is an act of creation. You are creating something. If you want to maximize your odds of being successful as a creator, you need to get good at the skills that enable you to create. Like, that seems obvious, right? Now, so that deserves a takeaway. Entrepreneurship is a process of creation. Cement that in your brain. If you have any instinct to be entrepreneurial at any point in your mind, get good at making stuff. Okay? Second takeaway, well, we'll call it 4.1. Sorry if you're hoping to be an entrepreneur. This is where I arrived from the very beginning when I was talking about telling you something that is true, but probably the opposite of what you currently believe. That is this. Studying entrepreneurship or even studying business does not increase your odds of becoming a successful entrepreneur. And I actually have academic references if any of you are interested in that. Like, I found people who studied that, and it is conclusive. There is no correlation between studying that and doing that. Okay? So what can we do then? What are the things that are the very most highly correlated with becoming successful entrepreneurs over time? Ideas? Study CS, right? That's, as odd as it sounds, that's a second tier, right? So I talked before about how there are things that have impact of 1 relatively, relative impact of 10, relative impact of 100. That's a 10. That's not a 100. What are some ideas for hundreds?
I was going to say, I feel like a lot of entrepreneurship is also being in the right place at the right time.
Yep.
When the internet was just starting.
You're exactly right. All the industrialists, same thing. Like they had the tenacity and the vision and the intelligence and all of that, but they happened to be alive during the Industrial Revolution, right? So you're right. So there's some randomness, some luck that happens there. What are the other things? What are the things that would score 100 on impact?
I think you said one of them, tenacity.
Tenacity, that is one of them. Yep.
I think they're able to connect the value and what they brought to the table.
Yep. Still a 10 though. Still a 10, not 100.
Risk takers.
Maybe. Rob.
So I don't know if this helps or hurts or does one of your
Yeah, so I'm going to lump that in with this notion of right time, right? So you've got temporal location and also spatial location. You're saying spatial, but the other was temporal, like right place, right time. Yep. So that's fine. I'll give that one to you guys. Like that is 100 impact.
The entrepreneurs I know that are the most successful are usually ones that work the longest hours.
Yep. So you just touched on several of them. The things that are most very highly correlated with entrepreneurial success are, honestly, it sucks to hear it, but it's winning the ovarian lottery. That's what it is. You know, you've heard the Buffett quote, right? You were born here in this time. You were born to parents who were attentive and prized education, and they blessed you with genetics that gave you an above average level of intelligence and a healthy work ethic. Like that is the stuff that ranks 100 in its impact to your potential success as an entrepreneur. The part that sucks is you can't do much about it. Like you guys are in your 20s plus. There isn't a whole lot at this point that you can do to change your cultural upbringing. That's kind of done, right? So let's get past that part then. That's sort of the 100 level impact factors. What are some 10s? We mentioned a couple before. By the way, a bunch of these I totally lifted gratuitously from a study done by the Kauffman Foundation. They study and promote entrepreneurship. So I'm going to rattle off numbers here. There is actual data behind the numbers, believe me. So the things that fall in that impact of 10, develop a sense of social, familiar, and cultural independence, which is ambivalence towards tradition, incumbents, and authority figures. This isn't the same as a rebellious streak or a contrarian streak. It's just ambivalence to authority. It's not adhering to tradition for the sake of tradition. It's being willing to do something different. Go to college. 95% of successful entrepreneurs have gone to college. That's not the same as graduating, but it's go to college. But once you're in college, don't perform as well as you did in high school. So by and large, the successful entrepreneurs were in the top 10% in high school and in the top 30% in college. Okay? While you're in college, do something value generative, like he was talking about. Do something that makes value for somebody. Learn a valuable skill. Learn something concrete. Side note there, if you were on the board of the Harley-Davidson company, you guys know what Harley-Davidson is, right? Okay. I'm not talking to space aliens or something. If you guys were on the board of the Harley-Davidson company and you were tasked with finding the next CEO, what are the qualifications for that CEO? He's got a ride, right? You know, same thing with the Gibson Guitar Company. If you're going to hire the next CEO of a brand like that, what did that person better be able to do? She's got to play the guitar, right? Of course, they've got to be good at business as well. They've got to, understand finance and that. But it's a non-starter if you don't do the thing that you're in the business of doing, at that level. So continuing. While in college, be ambivalent about being an entrepreneur. 75% were somewhat interested or less in their survey. This is very closely related to majoring in something as an undergrad rather than the business of something. Don't wait until after college to finish. Don't wait till you finish college to start your stuff, right? Start working on your ideas while you're in college. And while you're at it, do it over and over and over. 60% of successful entrepreneurs did it multiple times. Okay? Lastly, and this one is not entirely intuitive until you think about it, get married, but not at 19. Why? Why get married and why not at 19? What? So that's the 19 part. So you're too young, but why? Why does it make a difference? Too young is pretty abstract.
Pretty hard to start a business. You got kids.
Yeah, it's a matter of practicality, right? So why get married? Why do 60% of successful entrepreneurs start after being married? So yeah, there's some motivation. What's that?
You've already started it, so then you're just building it, and then you have motivation building.
You also have household stability. You often have a second income. There's a slew of reasons, but it's mostly practical again. The other thing that is correlated with that, though, is the age at which you start. Do you know the age bracket for most successful startup founder ages? It's in their 40s, right? So that might explain away that, like, be married. It's just that most people, by their 40s, they are married. And so it might not be causal. It might just be correlated. Now, I want to identify something very specific about this category of impactors. You know, I talked before about, like, there's the 100 level impact. These are the 10s. What did those things have in common? Were any of them specific to entrepreneurship? What? No. They were foundational strengths, right? They had nothing to do. So going back to this, they were modifying the inputs while being ambivalent about it being entrepreneurship or not, right? Those people are just going through and making themselves valuable, making themselves powerful, regardless of whether that leads to later entrepreneurial success or not. Okay, so I want to get down into okay, so there's a takeaway for that one too. The most potent advantages are genetically and culturally passed, but you can't do much about those. And develop foundational skills. There is a high correlation between foundational skills and entrepreneurial success, but it doesn't matter whether those skills were acquired for the purpose of being entrepreneurial or not. It's just get the skills. Okay, lastly, the 1%, not the 1%, the 1 level impact factors. These are all the stuff that are talked about in popular media. It's the hustle, it's the grit, it's the, refine your pitch and the vision and all that stuff. These, yes, they absolutely make a difference, but it's a level 1 difference, not a level 10 difference, and certainly not a level 100 difference. If you'll have patience with me through a sports analogy, the level 100 impactors, that's like having the physique of LeBron James, right? Those are his genetics. I am never going to be able to compete on the court with LeBron James. Look at me. The second level, the next most potent ones, the level 10 impactors, that's basic strength, speed, conditioning, courage, that sort of stuff. It's not specific to any sport, right? How many of you have ever heard of Tony Gwynn, John Elway, Bo Jackson, Deion Sanders, right? What do all those guys have in common? What? Sorry, louder, I can't hear you. Multiple sports. They were professionals in multiple sports. Do you know how many of those there were? I looked it up on Wikipedia. There are thousands. Thousands of people made it pro in more than one sport. Why do you think that is? Good foundations, good genetics, and basic athletic characteristics. Speed, strength, stamina, courage, right? What do you think their personal odds would have been going into any sport they chose? Really high, right? I heard a quote once. In fact, Tom Glavine was on that list too. He was, I think it was the NHL, and he got drafted in the NHL, didn't play, but got drafted, and then obviously played for the Braves for years and years and years. I heard a quote about him from one of his teammates on the Braves. He said, they said that he was the best athlete they had ever met. He was a pitcher, and he was the best athlete they had ever met. He said he would beat you in the clubhouse at ping pong left-handed. Like, he was just a machine, right? Any sport he chose, he would have dominated, right? Usain Bolt, same thing. He's playing pro soccer now, right? I mean, he just has what it takes, partly through his effort and determination, part of it through his sheer gifts, right? Now, the third level stuff, that would be the equivalent of studying a pitcher's move so you know when to steal second base, or tuning your defense to stop Steph Curry, right? That serves you in a specific case, but it's going to win you one game. It's not going to win you a championship, right? It's not going to overcome basic conditioning or basic genetics. Now, it's still worth paying attention to, but understand that it's a level 1 impact, not a level 10 and not a level 100, okay? Now, I don't want to punch you in the gut and run away. I understand it's also my prerogative that I can spew forth my wisdom, or at least advice, or at least shed some opinions while I'm here. So I am going to weigh in on a couple of things. You can call this Brent's list of things that you should do if you want to be an entrepreneur. So I'm going to gloss past the 100s and the 10s. I'm going to get that out of the way. These have nothing to do with that. These are the ones. The stuff that, like, after you've taken care of genetics and conditioning, work on this stuff, okay? First thing, go get a friggin' job. Okay? If you want to be a successful entrepreneur, no joke, go get a job, okay? If you aren't already working on a solid idea, go look for the best run company that you can find the best manager at that company, and convince them to take you on. You'll learn in a couple of years what it took me 20 years to learn doing it myself, okay? Go get a friggin' job. Second, figure out how stuff works. And I don't mean like the encyclopedic way. I mean go out in the real world and figure out how stuff in the real world works. Figure out why certain industries carry these weird idiosyncrasies for so many years when it just seems totally backwards. Figure out how you deliver value. Figure out what value means. How many of you have ever heard of a guy named Paul Graham? Oh, some of you raised your hands about wanting to be entrepreneurs, and you don't know who Paul Graham is. He, one of the most prolific entrepreneurs, then angel investors, founder of Y Combinator. So you've heard of Y Combinator, right? He has many good posts on his blog. I encourage you to check it out. One quote in particular I want to share here is that he says, if you're trying to solve problems you don't understand, you're hosed. Next, solve lots of problems. Get accustomed to it. Go through many iterations of solving problems. You'll start to recognize which problems are solvable and which ones are not, which ones you can solve and which ones you can't. You'll also get good at executing the solution. Next, be a hacker. Take things apart, put them back together, hang out with other hackers, join the forums, join the hacker spaces. Now, I want to make sure that it's very clear, I don't mean be a rebel. There's a whole different talk for a whole different day, but rebellion and conformance are the same sin. Don't do either, right? Don't conform, don't rebel for the sake of rebellion. In both cases, you're simply abdicating your agency to someone else. You're just flipping the sign on one of them. So be a hacker. Use things in ways that weren't intended by the manufacturer. Be independent. Think independently. Be a skeptic. Be a cynic. Fifth, make stuff. Just get in the habit of making stuff. Now, this is one of those rabbit holes where you need to go all the way down. Like I said before, entrepreneurship is, in essence, creation of a thing. It's creating a new reality by creating a path to that new reality. That path might be a business process. It might be a machine. It might be a robot. It might be a legal framework. But it's creating a path to create a new future. Get used to creating stuff. Creating stuff should be second nature for you. When you encounter a problem, that should be the lens you see it through. Your instinct should be to create something to solve the problem. That's how far down that rabbit hole you need to go. Number 6, tell stories. You'll hear a lot about this in the popular media, having a vision, refining your pitch, all of that stuff. That is absolutely important. But it's important in more ways than I think the public media gives it credit for. They talk about it because you're going to need to raise money and you're going to need to hire people. I think it's a much more important aspect even earlier in the value chain. You need to find a reliable way to vet your own ideas. The most effective way to do that is to pitch them over and over and over. See what people light up about when you talk about it. See what they yawn about. Like, figure out what characteristics of an idea make it strong, make it weak, make it attractive. Okay? Iterate, tell stories. Number 7, be an awesome person. There is a subtle difference between being an awesome person and acting like an awesome person. Do not act like an awesome person. Be an awesome person. Be a good roommate, be a good spouse, be a good friend, be a good family member, right? You do not want people that aren't awesome in your organization, and they don't want you if you're not awesome. Be an awesome person. And lastly, yeah, do all the stuff that the experts recommend. Like reading all of that popular media by itself is a good habit. Learn to absorb tons and tons of content, learn how to relate it to your own situation, and then go take their nuggets of wisdom. You know, I'm up here, it took me 20 years to get where I am today, and I haven't even really achieved that much. Like, you, honestly, you could probably do it in half that time easily if you had access to resources that I didn't have. Intellectual resources, social resources, networks, stuff like that. So by all means, don't ignore good advice just because it's a cliche. You don't have to be contrarian and disparage everyone who comes with a vision pitch. And, like, it might still be a good idea even if it's popular. Okay? So takeaway number 7, after everything else, then you can go through and develop skills and habits that are specific to entrepreneurship. Okay? But remember what they are. They are the level 1 optimizations, not the level 10 optimizations or the level 100 optimizations. And remember, what we're really trying to do is just maximize our probability of being successful. We cannot control it. That whole nebulous cloud is in the way. We can't control it. Now, again, I don't mean to come off as disparaging an academic business, rigorous background. I don't, like, if you're studying business, you have your reasons. I'm not here to judge that. I don't want to be overly disparaging of the people who study business on my list, except for maybe people who are racially motivated or abuse their customers. Like, I will disrespect them openly. But at the end of the day, if you have one takeaway from this whole line of thinking, it's the most you can do is influence, you can skew the probabilities of your own success. You need to understand what factors skew them the most and focus on those. Don't waste your time on a 1 if you can affect a 10 or a 100. Okay? Any questions? Sweet, let's eat lunch.
Questions on stuff because I'm mid-developing a project, but there's legal stuff in my way that's not like I need to change some zoning stuff that's already actively in the middle of being changed. I can't start.
No, totally fine. So this is an area where I would just defer to the popular media, right? I mean, the theme in the popular media is take care of your hardest challenge first. So front load your risk. And if that's your biggest risk, I mean, knock that one out and then go on to the next one. Oh gosh, I'm gonna invoke my inner lawyer and say, well, it depends. Yeah, sorry, I forgot. They told me to do that and I totally forgot. So he asked about, like, if you need capital, what's the best way to go about getting capital? And the answer is, it depends. I'm not willing to give a concrete answer to that, except not every business needs capital, and only raise money if you absolutely have to. Okay? There are 100 different ways, and Rob teaches an entire class about that. So I'm great. I'm doing great so far. I've deflected 2 questions out of 2.
So I'm just curious, I mean, you talk about giants. They're studying and what they're doing. Sometimes we get lost in the focus of these big guys.
Yeah.
And most of us are going to be small guys.
Yeah, so that's a very good question. He's asking, do I have any data about the small-time successful entrepreneurs rather than just the upper echelon? I don't. For 2 reasons. One is it's much harder to come by. The other is that we spend most of our time and attention focusing on those ultra-successful entrepreneurs and trying to emulate the characteristics we see there. Like, we set those up as the archetype of what we should aspire to as entrepreneurs. And that's good, and I agree with that. But then we turn around and focus on the wrong aspect of how they became successful entrepreneurially. So again, that's 3 for 3 I've dodged.
What are some of your personal failures in terms of, like, what are some of the faltering steps?
So 2 things come to mind. So he's asking, what are some of my own personal shortcomings, ways that I've meandered rather than getting it right the first time? Two things that 2 big mistakes I've made over the years. The first is underestimating the value of actual managerial expertise. Like, excellence in management is super important. The second thing is the importance of relationships. In my past, I have focused on the product or on the customer and neglected relationships around me to the point that people were not comfortable bringing up issues with me, right? And that is an abject failure, right? There was somebody over here I totally skipped, sorry.
What's the important skill or factor that you look for when hiring someone after that?
Yeah, so he asked, what's a skill that I look for when hiring people? That's an easy question. I have two things that I look for, intelligence and dedication, right? The 100 level things. I can teach most of the 10s and 1s. I can definitely teach the 1s. I can probably teach the 10s. I can't teach intelligence or dedication. So I screen for that, and then I can take care of the rest.
How would you recommend doing that?
I don't know. Yeah, so he's asking, how do you take somebody who's got the right checklist of the 100 level factors, how do you get them to start into the process of tapping into those, right? I have no idea, you know. Similarly, somebody that has those 100 level factors, that doesn't guarantee success, right? I mean, like, I don't mean to, you know, pick open any scabs or anything, but you guys remember Greg Ostertag? Like, clearly genetically blessed, right? Did not turn out to be Shaq, right? So he's asking, how do I measure intelligence and dedication? This is art, not science. So there are some things that you can do that are fairly shallow. You can look at, you know, their GPA. That does tell you something about either dedication or intelligence. You get one of the two with that, right? If they got into a prestigious university, that means something. You know, as shallow as that seems, well, it sucks, but it means something if they got into Caltech, right? If they got into MIT, it probably means they couldn't get into Caltech. Those of you that have people who went to Caltech will appreciate that. Anyway, one more.
I'm just curious what Blip does.
Yeah. So what Blip does, we write software for digital billboards and operate a marketplace where we sell space on digital billboards. So historically, the billboard industry, if you wanted to buy time on a billboard, whether digital or static, you had to go talk to a person, fax them a contract. It took, you know, probably weeks worth of effort to get your first creative design up on the billboard. And because of all the human interaction and the cost associated with that, they had minimum thresholds of price that they couldn't go below and sell you a contract and still make any money. So what we did was we created a...
Your colleague wants to add to it.
Okay, let me finish and then we'll get to one last one then. So we just fractionalized it all the way down to the smallest unit of sale, which is an 8-second rotation on a digital billboard. We sell in units of 8 seconds. Yeah, in the very back.
What should we do if we're interested in working?
You should go talk to Allison, who just asked the question. She's our HR manager. She will be in the hallway right after this. The question was, what should you do if you want to work for Blip? She has the answer.
You have this mic on? Hey, can I get this mic on? Hey, how many of you, is it working? Hello, there it is. Hey, at my first presentation to you, I showed a picture of Einstein. Do you remember what was written behind Einstein? Does anyone remember that? Good, that class went so well. It was question everything. Today, have you been challenged to think? Have you been challenged to question something in your own life and how you could do better? To that regard, Brent has done a wonderful job of making you question something. Will you please join me in thanking him for coming?
Thank you.